Hi, this is Pete Trewavis from Transatlantic. You're listening to Dave J on KCLA Radio.
Okay, thanks Pete for joining us today. It's a great pleasure to have you here.
Pleasure.
Welcome to LA.
Yeah, no, isn't it beautiful today?
Beautiful day.
I've actually been here a week now, so I'm still not quite over the jet lag because we've just been working so hard. I haven't really managed to get my sleep patterns together.
Did you fly over before the volcano problem?
Yeah, flew in last Sunday. But two of our crew guys haven't managed to make it for the first leg of the tour, so that's a shame.
Oh, so they're going to
One of them's we've got the guy who does lights for Marillion, Jens. Is stuck in London currently.
Wow.
And the other guy's a merch guy who isn't going to make it for the American leg. I think Jens will actually make it though, hopefully.
That's cool.
So,
hopefully you get here on time.
Well, he won't get here for today, so we've got somebody else doing lights today. But.
And your tour is taking in the US and also Europe.
Yeah, we are. Yeah. We start in the US and we're doing LA, San Francisco, Chicago, New York, Quebec, New York, and Philly.
And then you can check out the dates on your website.
Can check out the dates on our website, or if you're lucky enough to be here and have a T-shirt, you can see the dates on the back of the T-shirt.
That's cool. We'll have to get one. So how have the rehearsals been going?
Great, actually. I mean, it's tough, because we're doing 3 hours of music and there's a lot to learn, there's a lot to prepare for, and then when you get here, there's a lot to take in, and obviously we change things as we go along because it's a kind of organic process we go through. There's a lot of talent in the room, and a lot of people having a lot of ideas about how we can make things better, how we can help the album, and obviously, there's a lot of ideas that we have about how to, take the album into the live environment, but it's all good. It's all really good. It's all been really positive, which is nice.
Does it take a while to adjust to playing live with those musicians again?
Yes, it does. It does a bit. I mean, particularly from the stamina point of view, and particularly from the playing ability point of view. You sort of have to be. I mean, it's busy stuff. There's a lot of notes. There's a lot of riffing going on, and it's not usually my style. But I prepared. I started working on the music about 3 months ago, and playing through the songs, familiarising myself with the arrangements of the songs enough so that I didn't have to think, what comes next.
Yeah,
it was,
so you get them off by heart.
kind of trying to learn them like I would have learned a Beatles song years ago. I never have to think about how Beatles songs goes because I've heard them so many times.
So ingrained.
So I was trying to ingrain all of that in, and at the same time get my fingers, get the agility enough so that I could play along and not look a fool on stage. Well, it's I mean, one of the not exciting things about the album is that when we recorded it, I'd just come off a tour with Marillion, so I was actually, sort of in good condition playing.
You're fighting weight and
exactly. Yeah, well, it's kind of like if you want to play something well, you've got to train a bit for it.
Yeah, sure.
And so consequently, because I was sort of up to speed with the playing ability, the recording has got some pretty hectic bass lines in it, and I wanted to make sure that I was back up to that speed really for the live shows. And I think I'm nearly there. We'll see, won't we? We'll see. I mean, we're recording and filming London. By the time we get to London, I think it's going to be amazing.
Perfection.
It's going to be great, because I mean, we've got Daniel Goldenlow from Pain of Salvation with us. He's he's a virtuoso, incredible musician. Like the others. I won't say like the rest of us because I don't really consider myself to be there yet. But yeah, so he helps. I mean, he's playing 2 or 3 things at once sometimes, but there's a lot to cover, and we didn't want to, say, we'll trigger that sound, or we'll do this, or we'll do that, or we'll have those bits on tape or something. It was recorded with no click tracks, and it's going to be played exactly the same way. It's going to just be played like people used to in the old days. Yeah, it's completely live experience. It's live.
And live.
Yeah, and live, yeah.
Does your role in Transatlantic differ from the role in Marillion?
I think it does. Yeah, it does a bit. I mean, the thing is with Marillion is that we have a front man, and it would kind of be a bit dumb to try and, overshadow what the guy who's singing all the songs is doing.
Yeah.
So there's a kind of not a pecking order, but there's a kind of there's an awareness within the band of when to when to shine and when to just hold back
Right.
and just be there for the songs. You know, it's all about the songs. With Transatlantic, it's kind of been portrayed as this super group, and it's quite nice that, you know, there's 4 frontmen. We're all doing it all at, you know, a bit like
All
the Who,
experts in your
watching the
field,
Who on
yeah.
stage, I suppose. So, you know, I get to be as bold and outrageous as I want to be on stage, and the more the merrier, you know. I mean, it's all embraced in Transatlantic, whatever you want to do.
Does the songwriting, the creating process differ with Marillion and Transatlantic?
Again, yes, yeah, it does. I mean, with Transatlantic, it's all about never having enough time quite to do what we want to do. So everything's in incredible hurry, and you know, because Dream Theatre Mike never stops anyway. You know, so Mike's like, I've got a spare 5 minutes. Let's make an album. You know, okay. When we decided we'd get back together, and when we actually got the diaries organised and decided that we had a week, just around Easter last year. Again, I was at the start of a tour with Marillion. So while we were on tour with Marillion, I started writing stuff.
Okay.
So, and Royner has, you know, I mean, Neil had, I don't know, half a dozen kind of half-hour songs. He had a 45-minute piece called The Whirlwind, which he wanted to record. Royner had about 2 or 3 hours of music that he brought in, because he just writes music every day.
Constantly.
He was telling me yesterday, Royner gets up at 9, goes in the studio and works till around midnight every day.
Wow. That's dedication.
Oh, it really is. His wife and kids must be, you know, his wife must be a very patient lady, is all I can say. But, you know, that's what you do if you love music.
Yeah.
If I wake up with an idea in my head, I have to record it. One day I might just do an acoustic album. You just don't know. But if an idea in my head, I have to put it somewhere. I have to get it down, and then it gives space for the next idea to come along.
And then you can go back to it and develop it.
Otherwise, I'd always be bugging about that thing in my head, you know, that I wanted to see where it could take me.
And
so we all come along to Transatlantic with our musical ideas, and we sent, because of the internet, the great thing about the internet, we sent files to each other, and then we got to Nashville, and I flew in, and that evening we started getting studio sounds, and the next day we started. And one of the first things we did was come up with we had 5 or 6 hours of stuff we could draw from. One of the first things we did was just embrace ourselves playing and come up with something brand new. So that was the nice thing about this album, was that we all know each other so well, we're all so relaxed.
Going back to, I suppose, Marillion are very much supporting themselves these days with the website.
Absolutely. We decided to take control of our own destinies a few years ago now. I mean, before we needed to, actually. But we just got to a stage where we'd been in the music business longer than everybody that was working for us. And we had agents that we weren't really happy with. And we had manager that was kind of taking quite a lot of money. And we'd thought, well, actually, what's he doing for us, you know? And there always seemed to be a good reason not to do what we'd suggest stuff, and we'd say where we'd want to play. And we'd say, we want to do this sort of tour. And our agent said, well, no, that's not really the sort of tour people are doing these days. This is what you want to be doing. It's like, no, that's just because it's easy for him to pick up the phone and make that tour happen. You know, he didn't want to put the groundwork into doing what we wanted to do. So we got rid of him. And then a few months later, we had a similar kind of situation with our manager, where what we wanted to do, he was trying to talk us out of, simply because he didn't want the hassle of having to try and find the money and negotiate with people. So we thought, well, why don't we just do it ourselves? We know what we want to do. We know what we're about.
Experience.
And again, with record companies, you know, it's incredible how many people just don't do what you ask of them. You know, we'd have people, and we'd be, you know, when we were signed to them, I remember we'd have a single out, and we'd be saying, oh, send, you know, this is where you want to send promo copies of the single, and we'd have the A&R guy saying, oh yeah, we don't, or the radio guy saying, yeah, we've done that, and he hadn't. They were kind of just left in the boot of his car, you know, because he couldn't be asked to do it.
So I presume as well, being, you know, self-supporting and managing yourself, that gives you the freedom to do projects like this.
Well, it does.
Which if you're on a major, you probably wouldn't be able to do.
Yeah, I mean, we still use majors. We still look. I mean, with every project, we now take every project that we're going to do as an individual thing, and we look about to see where we want it distributed and how we want to do it. And we've tried using EMI. EMI are very good at distribution, but you don't get much money back. We've tried using, at the moment we're on Adele for we did a re-recording of some of our favourite songs that we've done over the years acoustically, which is called Less Is More, which is a fantastic album, because we didn't just take the songs and re-record them, we actually completely rearranged them. Because it's an acoustic album, we thought rather than just have it be a strum through of some of our favourite songs, we used some very far out acoustic instruments. We used auto harp, we used glockenspiel, xylophone. We all had to kind of learn to play these acoustic instruments, and everything was recorded together in the room, just like people used to in the old days, because we wanted to keep the ambience of the drums and all of, we had about 30 or 40 mics on all these different instruments, and it all had to be played at the right time. And the singing, the singing was done later.
So the arrangements themselves are going to be different.
It sounds, a lot of the arrangements are brand new. We cut bits out of some songs because we thought, there's a lot of dead wood in this song really. If you just want to break it, because when you're playing songs that simply, you notice what works and what doesn't, and which bits of the songs were just kind of add-ons because you wanted to have, those sounds from that keyboard rig or that guitar solo or something. But when you've got acoustic instruments, you can take on the simplicity and nurture it and enhance it somehow. And it's a lot of a quieter situation for the singer to be actually telling you the song, and you can really focus on the lyrics and get the sense of the song.
Great stuff. I'd like to take you back now to when you were a child. What first got you interested in the music?
I was so lucky. I was born in 1959, so I'm pretty old. I'm almost too old to talk these days. And of course that put me in a place where I was growing up listening to the Beatles. Now, in the 60s you couldn't escape the Beatles, but in England it was even, that was 100 times more. You're English yourself. And so everywhere you went, the Beatles were there. If you turned on the radio, they were on the radio. You turned on the TV, they were on the TV. You go to the sweet shop, they were on the bubblegum wrappers. They were on everything. And I had a huge love of music myself, because my father used to play jazz records actually on a Saturday. But I used to listen to the radio and stuff. But one of the things that I really remember was one Christmas, the BBC broadcast the Beatles live from Shea Stadium, because they'd obviously part funded the filming and they wanted to justify to their audience and their the people who pay the licence fee what all that money was spent on. And I remember seeing them flying over New York and then running onto the stage and all the fans screaming and everything, and I just thought, that sounds like a good place to be. I want to be Paul McCartney in that helicopter. And I didn't even know what a bass guitar, I was probably 6 or 7, I didn't really know what a bass guitar was, but I just thought it looked cool and what he was doing was good. And then I've got quite a good musical ear, so I started listening with more attention to Beatles records and realising that actually one of the guitars was just playing the chords and the other one was kind of doing little riffs and things to enhance the vocals, and the bass guitar was the one keeping the rhythm with the drums. And I thought, that's an interesting thing to do.
So you went straight to bass guitar, you didn't learn guitar first?
No, I learnt guitar first because my sister was having guitar lessons. I wasn't allowed them because it was deemed that I was too young. This guy called Keith Bakeman, I'm going to name and shame you now, Keith. No, he was a lovely guy actually, but when my sister wanted guitar lessons, I was 4 years younger than my sister, so she was about 11, I was about 7. I said, I want guitar lessons too. And my parents just thought I was doing it, I want to copy my sister thing, but they didn't realise how fanatical I was going to become about music. So, and this guy Keith said, well, at 7 he probably hasn't really got the attention span. I don't think the lessons, I think you'd be kind of throwing your money away really, because I don't think he'd really, stick to it. Most kids of that age wouldn't. So my sister had guitar lessons and she wasn't really getting on with it very well. And I'd pick up the guitar. It'd be frustrating her, and it'd be frustrating my parents even more, you can imagine. and I'd pick up the guitar and show her what it was she was trying to do, because I could hear what it was that she was supposed to be trying to do, and I could work out on the guitar where she was playing a note that was slightly flat. I could tell, but you've got a note wrong there, it should be that. And so my parents said, oh, actually, maybe he should have guitar lessons then. And so I had a few guitar lessons, and it was really just to show me some chords and stuff. And my best friend, and we were both 7 at the time actually, my best friend was having guitar lessons from him as well. And we've stayed friends ever since. We formed loads of bands, and we're both in the music business.
Whereabouts was that when you were?
That was in Aylesbury. That was in Aylesbury. And if you're familiar with a guy called Howard Jones.
Oh, yes.
My friend Robin Bolt plays guitar with Howard Jones now. But he used to play with Fish for a while, and then he became a session guitarist and did stuff on Spice Girls and all kinds of albums. And certain albums he probably wouldn't want to know about, actually. Yeah, I don't always like the name on these records, but it pays the bills.
So when did you?
But so that was
my first guitar.
I got my first. Well, we had this acoustic guitar, which was became mine because my sister got angry about not being as good as me. I can appreciate that now. I couldn't at the time. But I got my first guitar. It was a second-hand Vox. It was a white Vox guitar. It wasn't a teardrop, but it was a white Vox guitar in a kind of style of a Strat, I suppose. Right. And of course, to me, because it was second-hand and everything, and to me it was just like, well, it's not a proper guitar because it's not a Fender or anything. Yeah. But I guess it was about £30 or something. But then I had another guitar called a Framus, which was red, and had 3 pickups, and it had 3 kind of toggle switches, and then I sold that. I don't know really how that happened, but I must have sold that, and I bought a brand new bass guitar from Percy Priors in Wickham. No. And I was about 12 years old, and I realised that my friend Robin was really becoming much better than I was on the guitar. I could play the chords and everything, and I was really good at keeping time, and he was doing all. We used to mess about with Django Reinhardt stuff and jazzy stuff, because it was kind of what you could pick up and play. So anyway, we decided to form a band. It was all about garage bands in those days, and that really was bands that played in garages. That wasn't about being an indie kind of movement of music. And we needed a bass player, so I decided to be the bass player, and I bought my first bass guitar, and it was £21 brand new. And I think I had money for Christmas, and my birthday's in January, so I had money for Christmas and money for my birthday. And my parents would say, are you 12 years old? And I said, are you sure you want to do that? Because you'll have nothing to open on Christmas Day. Do you really want to put yourself through that? We can give you an envelope with all the money in so you can see it. And, and I said, yeah.
Pretty good investment in hindsight.
Well, it was a horrible guitar, actually. And then I bought a white, then after that I bought a white kind of SG copy. Well, EB3 copy, I now know. At the time I thought it was an SG copy. And that was a bit better. And then I became a poor student, and I had absolutely no money and a really shitty guitar. And we had a music, two guys came into town and started running a music store called Free and Easy. And as a promotion to get to people in the area, to get to know them, they did a raffle, and the first prize was a guitar. Wow. And they kind of organised it that I'd win. So I chose a bass guitar. I managed to get a Fender bass guitar. So I really appreciate what they did, actually. Well, it was great, actually. It was amazing to be given that support, really.
Mm-hmm. And then when you first started playing in bands, what type of music were you listening to, apart from the Beatles, who were an influence?
Well, I started off in a band. I was in bands at school, and we did kind of Hawkwindy, riffy stuff. We just used to do a lot of stuff based on E, and then a lot of stuff that was based on E, D, and C, which is just a basic rundown, because it was easy to play. And then when I actually got into a serious band, I was in a band called Orthy. And another good friend of mine called Stephen Foe was a year older than us, and he was a violinist. Nice. He was a very serious musician, and he used to kind of write all these. They were kind of like progressive songs, so they were slightly folky, but they were very progressive as well. And Orthy, I guess, sounded a little bit like Marillion do, actually. And we used to go and do gigs. We actually did a few gigs in London, but I mean, I was 17 at the time, so I wasn't really allowed to play. We used to play pubs and clubs, but I wasn't supposed to be there really. But and Robin and myself weren't really allowed in there because we weren't 18. But they used to sort of sneak us in the back, and we used to play. And we became kind of, well, in the local area, we became like the band to go and watch, and we that kind of changed. People left the band, and that became a bit more of a mainstream rock band. And then punk happened, so we started doing things like Dr. Feelgood songs and stuff.
There was a big pub rock scene at the time, wasn't it?
Massive pub rock scene with the band that ended up being just Dire Straits actually. And then that band kind of split up, and I joined with some friends of mine from another band, and we formed a band that eventually was called the Metros, and we made an EP. We sold the EP and made enough money to buy tickets to America, so we flew to New York and lived in New York for 3 months, trying to make it. And of course we didn't. But the one thing we did do while we were there was support Duran Duran on one of the shows on their first US tour. And they turned up. I mean, they were in limos because they're the record company, but they turned up in this club, and they literally just had amplifiers and guitars.
Wow.
There was nothing else, and a keyboard. And they sounded, and they did. I tell you what, they did the first album, and it sounded note perfect.
Really?
I mean, I understand a lot of people have suspicions about pop bands and think, oh, they can't really do it. They don't know what they're talking. But they were great the night I saw them, and it was just a shitty little club, no backup at all, and they really put a lot of effort into it. Yeah. But then, of course, they turned up in this limo, immaculately dressed, and left as soon as the gig was over. They wouldn't even. Our drummer, because you can imagine, Duran Duran were a big deal in England
at the time.
And our drummer had the drummer and the singer were brothers, and they had a young sister who was absolutely in love with John Taylor, as most girls were in those days. And our drummer asked if he could have a photo, and he said no, we're going now, which I thought was a bit.
A bit off.
I've met John Taylor later on in life with Marillion, and he's a much more relaxed, cool guy. I think. So that was kind of, and then I came back. So digressing, I was in America. I was probably 21 at the time. I'd left my job. I had a TV. I was repairing TVs during the daytime, but that wasn't a serious job. It was just a way of earning enough money to keep myself in bass strings and valves from the bass amp. And then I gave him a job, and we went to America. Came back from America, and had that talk with my dad about my dad saying, "Well, son, what are you going to do with it?"
Yeah, get a proper
and
job.
I said, "Yeah, exactly." He was really cool about it because he had been forced to go into law, and he wanted to be. He was an incredible pianist, my dad, and I didn't realise, but until later on, how good he was. But when I was a kid, he'd be able to play Oscar Peterson, note perfect. And I just thought, oh, I guess dads can do that then, because I didn't know any better. And I didn't only realise now how amazing he was on the piano.
Yeah.
So that's probably where I get it all from. So my dad sat me down, and I said, well, I really want to try and do this. He said, yeah, but he said, you can waste your life away trying to do this. What do you think do you think you're seriously, do you think you can really do this? Do you think you've? And I said, well, I've got to give it a shot. He said, well, I can see that. I said, I'll tell you what. I said, I'll give it till I'm 25, and if I'm at 25, I haven't got anywhere, I'll give it up and do something else. He said, yeah, okay then. And then a few months later, I joined Marillion, and as they say, the rest is history.
Yeah.
And then 6 months after that, we signed to. Having been turned down by every record label, once I joined the band, we got signed. So I used to joke, when things got a bit heated, I used to joke that I was the reason why they got signed. Well, don't forget, I was the reason, because I was the new boy, so I got all the butt of all the jokes on the first tour. I was like,
so, did you expect to have the success you did with Marillion? Because
no, you
you
never
were
do.
playing, music which wasn't really that fashionable at the
Well,
time.
I know. It was unbelievably unfashionable, actually, and it made me laugh at first because they needed a bass player for a tour, and Fish came along, and I was doing R&B and stuff, and Fish came along and saw me playing, and he asked me to. He said, well, "I want you in the band." And then he had to phone me up and say, "Look, you're going to have to audition." He said, "You're in the band." He said, "Trust me, you're in the band. I have all the say." But he said, "For the rest of the guys, you'll have to come down and pretend you're auditioning." I said, "Okay, that's cool." He said, "But I know you can cut it for this tour, and we need a bass player," because he just sacked his best friend, Diz. Right. So I thought, this isn't a guy I'm going to get to. So I went along, and just as I was tuning the bass up, they were all kind of looking at each other as if, oh, he knows what he's doing then. So, and then they said, well, just jam around. I said, what do you want me to do? I said, because I don't really know your music very well. And they said, well, let's just jam around a few chord sequences and see how you get on. And of course I started. Now I was brought up listening to, as well as the Beatles, you know, I got into Yes, Genesis, Todd Rundgren, Caravan, King Crimson, all that stuff. I went through all of that stuff when I was learning to play bass. So, you know, if they'd said, well, let's start with Roundabout, I could have nailed it straight away, because that's what I learned to play. I learned to play bass guitar to Fragile and Selling England by the Pound, basically.
Better albums to start on.
Yeah, you know, so I learnt to do all the riffy, you know, all that kind of stuff, and you know, all that growly, squirey stuff. Amazing.
I mean, in those days when you were starting off, like the early 80s, it was great for progressive rock fans like me, because all your favourite bands, like Genesis, Yes, they were playing, you know, they'd only play live once every few years, and there'd be huge venues. And then at the time there was yourselves, Palace, Pendragon, IQ were playing small venues.
And then Bites got signed, because we were signed to EMI, but everyone thought, well, you know, it's obviously a favour to somebody. But I mean, the only reason why we were signed was that we could sell out so many places. Yeah. We just became so popular.
You did
particularly
it
in
on
the north of England.
Touring,
it was touring and playing the marquee. I mean, we must have played, before we signed, we played Reading. Yeah. That was a big deal. We'd been on the Friday Rock Show several times, and we could do like, I don't know, 20 or 30 dates at the marquee throughout a year, and sell them all out. And that was in the days when the marquee had 700 or 800 people in it, rammed, packed full, and they were all like, so EMI weren't going to sign us. They kind of turned us down, and John, our manager, he put on he said, right, we'll sort this out. He put on a show. I mean, and then we got to a stage where we were actually too big to play the marquee, but he put on a show at the marquee purposely, knowing that there'd be crowds and crowds of people outside not having tickets, and took the A&R guys in, and they saw it, all these people jumping up and down, and thought, that's a record buying market there. You know, so it was a bit of a no-brainer. But then the guy who ended up being our A&R man got the gig because he lost the toss. The two guys, neither of them wanted to sign to be the guy who was looking after us. So he actually lost the bet. It was a flip of a coin, and he lost out. And but you know, he was very good to us actually over the years he was with us. And EMI, I mean, you know, EMI they put money behind us. We had a massive. I remember before the first album, there was a massive poster campaign. Now these posters were about 20 feet high, and they were on every major railway station in England. Yeah. So that's how much money they put behind us. You know, we had I remember in the papers there was talk of us having this massive record contract. We didn't see any of the money, but the fact is it gave EMI a budget to work on. Yeah. And they did. They made us overnight sensationally big, you know, not as big as Iron Maiden, but they were. That was the plan, was to sell us like Maiden, right? Sell us to the rock audience, give us the same kind of, you know, give us a look and a logo, and keep it. And of course, that wasn't the sort of band we were. We wanted to change with every album. We wanted to change logos. Eventually, we were kind of allowed to change logos, but you know, we were much more in tune with a band like Led Zeppelin, because you know they encompassed lots of different eclectic styles of music, and that's what we were trying to do. We weren't trying to be progressive necessarily. We were just playing music that we liked, you know, and we didn't see a lot going on in music that was really what our hearts were into.
Yeah, in those days you had to serve an apprenticeship by, you know, building your craft, touring
Yeah,
the country.
Exactly.
I think I first saw you Newcastle Mayfair.
Oh,
I
yeah.
thought, wow, this band was something else. 2 days
We
later,
were good.
you could go down to Middlesbrough Town Hall and
Yeah.
you were playing there a few days later.
That's right.
And,
I remember that.
It was in, you know, all the music papers were writing about you at the time.
Oh yeah, we had Sounds and Melody Maker journalists following us on the tour.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, wow, well, that's quite big then. I didn't really think about it really.
Yeah.
Not nearly enough actually. And I never really expected it to last either, so I wasn't really taking it seriously enough to think, you know, what should I do to keep my, you know, to make my career more success, or, you know, to make my career or mould my career the way I would want it to be. I just thought, this is great, you know, but next year,
who knows?
It'll be another, you know, we thought next year there'll be another flavour, and eventually that did happen, you know, and we had to leave EMI because, well, simply the way we'd renegotiated our contract after Kaylee meant that every album we had to get a bigger advance, and then of course it got to the stage where every album the sales figures were dropping slightly, and it got to the point where we were selling under 1 million albums. This is how many albums people used to sell, by the way.
Yeah, in those days.
In the old days. Below 1 million albums, it wasn't profitable to EMI to keep us signed. So that's a tough one. But you know, you think these days, I think EMI would die for a band that could sell 1 million albums.
Do you think it's easier or more difficult these days for sort of musicians starting out in bands?
Well, it's easier for musicians because there's a lot more exposure for you. I mean, it is hard because there's so much out there. How do you get noticed above the crowd? But there's more opportunities for you if you're kind of shrewd and you're a bit savvy about internet and all of that, and you're willing to put the work in.
Yeah.
And willing to be nice to your audience. All an audience wants is a little bit of your time and for people to be, you know, to care about the music as much as they care about it.
Yeah.
Because an audience falls in love, you know, with the band for lots of reasons, but it has to be because the music's good, and it has to be because the band care about the music.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, if a band are just trying to do it because they want to be famous, you know, hey, I want to be famous and hang out with chicks, then you're not going to get an audience that way because the audience, you know, people aren't stupid.
Pick up on it,
They're not really that stupid.
You made a lot of your fans happy a few years ago when you played Market Square Heroes in Aylesbury Town Square again with
I know, yeah.
How was that difficult to organise?
It wasn't difficult to organise. It was a bit difficult to do in a lot of ways because, you know, it's a big deal doing something like that. It wasn't supposed to be. I mean, what's annoying about the internet for me in some respects was that all I was trying to do was just play a song with one of my mates in my own hometown, you know. It was only supposed to be a little thing, and then it got blown out of all proportion, and it's a shame when that happens, really. And then Steve, our singer, was kind of a bit, you know, he was thinking, well, you know, is that the best exposure that we as Marillion should have at the moment, you know, because we're trying to do our own thing, and you know, he got a bit fed up about the fact that there was so much of a big deal made out about the fish thing, and we were just trying to, you know, if you can't have a bit of fun without people reading so much into it, and it ended up on the BBC News website and stuff, and it's like, oh god,
blew out of proportion.
Well, it was a little, but it was fun to do. But it was what was funny. Sorry, fish, I'm gonna have to say this, but before we went on, you know, he said, I'm going to finish such and such a song, and then I'll say a few words before you're on stage, if that's all right. I said, yeah, sure. So we're at the side of the stage. Everyone knows we're at the side of the stage, and they're all kind of, people are coming up. Can you sign this? Can you do that? Oh, it's great that you guys are back again. How many songs are you going to play? And Fish is on stage. He says, and then he starts going into this huge long spiel. It takes about 20 minutes. It's like, we all looked at each other and go, oh yeah, you remember what it was like when he was the front man, you know, because he'd just go off on one some nights. And just, you know, the stories between the songs, if you remember, Forgotten Sons and stuff, the stories between the songs just got longer and longer and longer and longer. So that was quite amusing actually, and it was quite funny afterwards. And it was baking hot as well, and it was kind of a bit of an uncomfortable situation to be just sat at the side of this. It was a truck. I mean, the stage was a flatbed truck. Right. So we were stood at the side of it by these creaky steps, waiting to go on stage, and
just waiting to
get
on. It
felt like you kind of had your pants down, really.
So it was good bit of nostalgia.
It was funny. It was nice to do it. It was nice to see him actually. I mean, I always love seeing Fish. You know, we get on great socially. I just, I mean, the shame of it is, well, not necessarily the shame, but I just don't think we could ever really work. I think, well, not never, but I think it would be very hard for us to try and ever work together, because there's lots and lots of things that he's used to complete control of his life. We're all used to complete control of ours. But socially, it's lovely. We meet up a lot more than people think, actually. Yeah. We do meet up quite regularly, and we always have a great time.
So is there any era of your career that you more fond of, any particular, or is it always what you're doing currently?
Well, we've had a few pinnacles, haven't we? We've done some amazing things in Marillion, and I forget sometimes, and sometimes I just plain don't remember. Some of the things we've done. I mean, we did 4 Wembleys. We did a massive stadium tour with, not just with Clutching at Straws, but we did a huge tour, and we did Wembley and stuff with Steve. Yeah. People kind of forget that. I think a lot of people think, oh yeah, well they haven't been as successful with Steve Hogarth. It serves them right for not being prog enough these days. That's the kind of vibe I get from a lot of prog heads, which I kind of, I guess I accept it. People have their own opinions of music. I know everyone has a favourite album by a band, and it's usually when they were, sort of growing up or something. I do, and but it's not necessarily what you want to hear as a person in a band that's trying to, stay fresh and relative and keep the whole thing together. But we've done some amazing things. We did these huge tours. We've toured with Queen, with Freddie Mercury in the band. That was the last time we toured together with another band, actually. Yeah. Interestingly enough, we're just about to go on tour with Deep Purple. Wow. So, and that'll be the first time that we've toured since Queen. But before Queen, we toured with Rush. We've toured with Todd Rundgren as well. So we've toured with some great bands. Yeah, I know. Games, yeah. It's been a lot of fun, and we've done some amazing shows. We did. I played to the most people I've ever played to was probably in Rio. Right. We did Rock in Rio and also Sao Paulo. But we also did a show on our own in East Germany and played to getting on for 200,000 people.
It's a good crowd.
It's immense. It's too immense actually. You can't really take it all in. It's just like, wow, this is too much. And I remember one of those kind of gigs we were doing. I can't remember which one it was now. It might have been one of the ones with Queen. It was a big festival site, and there was a helicopter giving people rides. And I said, oh yeah, can any chance of me getting a race? And of course, I was in the second to headline band, so it's like, yeah, okay. And I remember the guy flying us over the audience, and it just went on for like it went on for a very, very long time, and I was thinking, Jesus. But I'm really proud of what we do now, actually. Yeah. I'm most proud of the fact that we are still doing it. We're still making great music. I mean, if anybody's not sure whether they want to listen to new Marillion, listen to a song called Neverland, which is on an album called Marbles, or listen to there's 4 little tracks called Marbles as well. Neverland is such a good song, and there's a great song. It's more of a ballad, this one, but called Fantastic Place, which is, it's a really moving song. Mm-hmm. And again, Happiness is the Road has some great songs. There's a song called Essence, which is fantastic, very proggy, but quite Beach Boysy actually. Mm-hmm. It's got influences of pre-prog, psychedelia and what bands were doing before even that happened. We're trying to hark back a little bit to what the Beach Boys were digging into, and maybe even what the Who were getting themselves into. And there's another song called Planet Marzipan, which is one of my favourites. It's got a great slapping bass line at the start of it, but it's a 20-minute song, and the second half is just so proggy in a kind of but it's proggy in a kind of Dark Side of the Moon meets Abbey Road way. Right. So it's kind of very English, actually, is the way I would describe it. And you should check it out because there's some good music there.
So what's in the pipeline after the current Transatlantic tour?
Transatlantic finished touring. I'm working on some music for a film with a good friend of mine up in New York.
Right.
Marillion are in the middle of doing some writing for the next album, but mainly preparing for festivals in the summer.
Right.
We're doing...
is that the High Voltage?
High Voltage, thank you very much.
Any plans for a solo album?
No, I do. Yes, I have, but I haven't. I'm too lazy to get round to it. I've got loads of songs that I've demoed, but I've demoed them in the easiest way possible. So I'd play like a guitar part once and then cut and paste it and cut and paste. And that is kind of like word processing for musicians, really.
Yeah.
I've plans to do another Keno album, or certainly do an album with John Mitchell, one or the other.
A good project.
I'd like to do another Keno album because I like the fact that Keno was more about the songs.
Yeah.
Although we were all kind of proggy players, we tried to restrain ourselves on the prog side of things.
Yeah.
And I think we managed that to a great degree. Keno toured with Spox. And at the end of the night, it was really nice hearing people whistling one of our tunes, because we just wrote. All we wanted to do was write catchy tunes.
Yeah.
We just wanted to dress it up a bit, but basically it was all about catchy tunes, something that you can hum.
Yeah.
Well, like I'll go back to Fragile. I mean, Fragile is made up of great tunes, simple little tunes, all constructed together in a really complex fashion, to fool you into thinking it's much more complicated.
Yeah. So I'd just like to end with a few quick questions for you.
Come.
Any unfulfilled ambitions?
I think I'd like to write a book, actually.
What type of book?
Well, probably a book about me. I'm not sure whether I'd want to write a book about my life. I've had a pretty fascinating life, though.
Yeah.
Or I'd like to write maybe a book based on my experiences, but not necessarily about me. Maybe fictional, or maybe kind of half fictional. I'm not really sure, but I think it's... loads of people want to buy into the dream and don't understand what it is about musicians that, what makes musicians function and how what their lives are like. People are given half truths and half myths. The myths of bands drinking Jack Daniels all day long and then going on stage and playing a killer gig. That's never going to happen, and it never did. So that is a complete myth, really. People aren't really that stupid or unsober as they make out. That's one of the myths. But I think I would. I think people would be interested in it.
With all your activity, you're sort of pretty busy most of the time. What do you do for relaxation when you're not working?
Oh, well, I'm a family man. So I try and spend a lot of time with my family, my kids. I love football, so I watch a lot of football.
Who's your team?
Well, it's Man United.
Right.
It has to be Man United. It's not because they were the best team in England, although they always have been, in my opinion, and most of the time that's been right. Liverpool had a bit of a dabble, so did Leeds. At the moment it's Chelsea, but I think United will probably win the league because they are winners at heart. But my parents are from Manchester, and my grandfather, on my father's side, was the town clerk of Stretford, and his offices were the town hall overlooking Trafford cricket ground.
Wow.
So my dad used to go up to his father's office and watch cricket and watch Gary Sobers and all those great old bowlers and cricketers. So he had a love of cricket. I have a love of football. He could never understand that. I could never understand trying to sit down for 5 days to watch guys catch a ball. I mean, really, how hard can it be?
In white clothes.
Exactly, yeah. And all that rubbing the ball, I don't know. There's a bit of a public school thing going on there, I'm sure.
Yeah. Is there anyone you would like to work with that you haven't worked with yet?
Oh, God. Well, I have to say Paul McCartney, really, I suppose. I'd love to work with well, there's a load of people, aren't there? There's a load of great musicians. Paul Simon, actually. I have a huge love of Paul Simon and his songwriting. What a craftsman he is. And one of the things that we've tried to do, and I think we're just about there with Marillion now, is craft our music. One of the things that you'll notice over the last few Marillion albums is that the craftsmanship of the songwriting is becoming quite exquisite. We really concentrate on being in the right place for the song.
Right.
and putting the song first. And that's an art, and it's a discipline that you have to give yourself and remind yourself of. And but we're very lucky. We've worked with some great producers who have tried to guide us in that way.
Yeah.
So bloody hell, Paul Simon. I'd love to work with him.
Mm-hmm.
People are wondering, so which prog person would you love to work with? And I don't really know. I don't really see myself. I can't. Well, actually, working with Mike, you know, is pretty good. And Transatlantic is lovely. I love working with Neil, because Neil is so inspirational, and he just loves what he does so much.
Yeah, that's refreshing to see. And somebody
just so inspiring to be, for somebody to be that in love with music, even more so than me. And I kind of think about music 24/7. He manages to squeeze a few more minutes in than I do.
Yeah.
And Roiner, and as well, you know, I can't leave Roiner out. Roiner is so clever. Roiner is the guy he'll come up with musical arrangements that, you know, are way, way more ahead and complicated than me. I mean, it really is university, above. It's really master's degree stuff.
So do you get to learn new things from
these
guys?
I've learned loads of stuff from Roiner. The simplicity and the construction of every little thing. I mean, that's what we try and do in Marillion, but it's not as complicated music. But when you do that with the kind of intense music that we're coming up with, that's quite special.
I was going to ask about the like bonus disc on the Whirlwind CD. You've got some interesting cover versions on there.
Yeah.
Do you each come with a favourite song, or do you just sit down and say what
Neil bagged Hogweed, which I probably would have put forward because I love Hogweed. I actually get 'em out by Friday as well is another great song. Yeah. What a great, those bass lines and the construction of those songs. Tony Banks, you know, was constructing and writing beautiful keyboard lines and probably, you know, more. And the organ sounds, the organ sounds and the synths and stuff, it's just sublime. But I actually, I came in one day and I picked up the guitar, and for some reason, America's I Need You came on, and I started listening to it, and oh, you know, that's not such a bad song. So I got in the studio, and as I always will, I picked up the guitar and thought, I wonder if I can remember how that goes. And Mike said, oh, you know what, Mike was there, and I didn't even clock that anyone was there. And Mike said, do you know what, I really love that song. So I Need You became my suggestion, but I didn't. It wasn't supposed to. Right. I wanted to suggest something way more complicated and proggy. Stand up to the mark of being a prog bass player. I know I keep joking about the prog thing. I'm not really taking the mickey. I mean, I do take prog quite seriously because some of my favourite music is prog. One of my favourite albums of all time is In the Land of Grey and Pink. And actually, if you talk to Steve Hogarth from Marillion, there's an urban myth that Steve Hogarth ruined Marillion and wants us to be a pop band. But certainly around the time of Holidays in Eden, that's what people thought. What they didn't realise, that actually Steve was plugging away for some of the most unpoppy stuff on the album, and we were forced by EMI pretty much to. I mean, we had an A&R man sitting in on the writing sessions, trying to get us to come up with a second Kaylee. You know, that's where they were at the time.
Pressure is. Yeah.
So, and Steve, actually, one of his favourite albums is In the Land of Grey and Pink as well. So we've all got our prog credentials intact at Marillion Camp, you know.
Right.
But
well, Pete, I'd like to thank you for the time chatting us today. Wish you every success in the new Transatlantic tour and with Marillion in the future.
Yeah,
thanks for spending time, and I look forward to the gig tonight.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks very much for your time. Pleasure talking to you.
Pleasure.
Good luck with the gigs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.